Sure. So the clinical features include that continuous regurgitation of the saliva and the feeding material, the milk or anything which you try to feed feed that baby, the baby will vomit or regurgitate. Saliva continuously pours from that mouth, and persistent feeding may cause aspirations, choking, cyanosis. That because respiratory distress, because aspirations happen because esophagus is not able to do their that work which it should be which esophagus is meant to do. Means the main work of esophagus is to transport food from the pharynx mouth to the stomach. If it is not able to do that, then the regurgitation happen and the food may aspirate into the trachea and go to the respiratory tract. That may cause that uh, uh, these respiratory distress problems. So the diagnosis is usually the clinical and confirmatory diagnosis is done by the that radiology. So the treatment include that surgical intervention should be done immediately. No conservative approach will work. Head of baby should be keep up 30 degrees so that that it aspiration will not occur, and immediate start broad spectrum antibiotics. So if anyhow the patient has aspirated something, so you can tackle the pneumonia. Next, the procedure gastrostomy is useful because um, before operative repair of esophagus, means the before definitive repair, that surgical emergency surgery gastrostomy is advised in that patient, so that the patient you can start feeding to the patients. So definitely surgical repair includes end-to-end anastomosis of both proximal and distal end of the esophagus. So the procedure of the repair is that usually we approach with the right side, fifth intercostal space. Then below the skin you can find there is a gyrus vein. You should ligate and divide it. The upper segment of that upper or the proximal segment of the esophagus should be identified by the you insert one tube from the mouth. Usually the procedure should be done in the under general anesthesia, and the tube is inserted through the mouth esophagus in the proximal segment, and after entering into the fifth intercostal space, and you find out that uh, proximal segment of esophagus with tube inside, and then you catch up this. That lower segment should be located, find out and divided from the other neighboring structures, trachea and other structures. And if you find there is a fistula, means that either with the proximal segment, either the distal segment. If it is has fistula with the trachea, then you have to first fix that fistula. Means you have to first divide it both. Means you have to divide separate surgically from that trachea and esophagus, and then first repair the trachea, and then you repair that part of that esophagus. After that you get the two ends of the esophagus, proximal and distal end. Then if the blind end is there, means the closed end, if the end is closed, you just excise little bit to make it to make a lumen inside that there is a proximal as well as distal segment of esophagus. Then you close the end-to-end anastomosis. Okay, so there is anastomosis, type of anastomosis: end-to-end anastomosis, side-to-side anastomosis, and end-to-side anastomosis. So what are the end-to-end, end-to-side, and side-to-side? Suppose these are two fingers. Suppose this is one organ, one hollow organ, just like this. Okay, you just consider it as the ileum. Okay, either the esophagus, you just consider it esophagus. So there is a atresia and there is two segment. separately and not fused properly. So these are two segments. So end-to-end anastomosis means we cut the both end of that this blind end of the proximal and distal segment, and then we join like this. This is called end-to-end anastomosis. Okay. Then end-to-side anastomosis means this usually done in that duodenum and ileum. Just like this is the duodenum and this is the ileum. So if you do anastomosis like this, it is end-to-end anastomosis. If you like that, this means this is the side portion and this is the end portion. So if you fuse the close this like this, then this is end to side anastomosis. And sometime when the in the ileum there is need to be fused, means you need to increase the lumen or some any other region. If you close two parts of the ileum like this, understand, like this, that is side to side anastomosis. So there are three kind of the anastomosis: end to end anastomosis, end to side anastomosis, and side to side anastomosis. So here because we have to close the esophagus longitudinally, so we have to do end to end anastomosis, means we are closing both end of the proximal as well as distal part of the esophagus. Then just after closing the esophagus, look for that hemostasis, and then you have to put some drain there and then close the wound. So this is the procedure in brief. You can see this is the right thoracotomy approach. Open here. Here you can see the trachea, and this is the esophagus. This is the proximal part, this is the distal part, and this is the fistula also. So first you excise this portion and excise the end part, and then close end to end anastomosis like this. This is the proximal part, this is the distal part. Just close like this, so it becomes the end to anastomosis. Simultaneously you have to repair the trachea also, because it has the usually it has the fistula. So what complications may occur in these procedures? The complication first is the leakage of anastomosis may occur if you are not if skilled, or if you are not have closed properly. Then properly, if your anastomosis is not occurs, means fusion is not there proper, then leakage may be there. And if the leakage happen, then what happens? Because it the whatever the you feed the baby, that spills out in the mediastinum, and you got the mediastinal infections. Then it may reach to the lungs and to the heart also. That may require further and another operation to clean that infections. And sometimes gastroesophageal reflexes may present as a late complication, because there is a shortening of esophagus occurs, because you have some remove some part of esophagus and it was not properly developed. So that may cause the later the patient gastroesophageal reflux disease. Okay, so next here we finish that congenital disorders. First, then after the first disorders, that is Mallory-Weiss tear. Mallory-Weiss tear is nothing just like the longitudinal tear in the line of that esophagus, in the inner line of the esophagus, inner coating, mucosal coating of the esophagus, that is called Mallory-Weiss tear. So these usually happen if somebody has the forceful vomiting continuously for the longer time. Then it happens that due to the high pressure in that cardia, the esophagus, the lower part of the esophagus get teared longitudinally. But tear is not very much deep, only the mucosal layer are involved, that muscles layer are not involved. So it is different from the perforations. Usually perforation not happen, but there is the tearing in the esophagus, that may cause the due to tear of mucosa, the bleeding may be occurs, so that may comes out through the mouth. That is, hematemesis may be there, severe pain may be there. Rarely severe bleeding occurs, just a little bleeding, but the pain is very severe, and patient must have the history of that the forceful vomiting. So, diagnosis and treatment of the malarial tear. The confirmed diagnosis is through the endoscopy with a direct vision, and usually the history also include the patient always give the history of the forceful continuous vomiting, and that along with endoscopy, that similar procedure, that esophagogastroduodenoscopy. Esophagogastroduodenoscopy is nothing, just an endoscopy of the esophagus, stomach and duodenum, because sometime if blood is coming with the vomiting, you should not and you cannot say that it is coming from esophagus or the stomach or from the duodenum. That's why esophagogastroduodenoscopy is required, because two conditions may occur simultaneously. Suppose you have a patient of that hematemesis, you just doing that endoscopy and you find the tear in the esophagus, and you come back, and then what happens, patient may have tear in the stomach also, or patient may have tear in the duodenum also. Patient may have the peptic ulcers. So that's why if you are doing the endoscopy, you must go up to that third part of the duodenum. That is the procedure, that is the protocol. If you once insert the endoscope, you must go up to that duodenum. The treatment is usually supportive, because the condition is not very much severe. The pain is severe, but the risk of life is not so much, because only the mucosal tears are there. And if you uh, keep your patients on that, you control the with the you control the vomiting, and you have to good medications, and patients nil per oral, so that mucosal tearing heal very fastly. And very rarely any kind of that closing embolization of the artery is required. If medical treatment initially is not responding, then endoscopic repairing of that tear is required. But in very few cases, usually conservative manage, just manage the patient conservatively, do needle per oral, and give some antiemetics, and for the control analgesic and the broad spectrum antibiotics, and patient will respond within 7 to 8 hours. If patient is not responding and continuous hematemesis is there and the bleeding is there, patient's general condition deteriorating, it means patient is continuously losing the blood. At that point of time, that endoscopic repair must be done by the endoscope. So this is the uh, small thing, means that a small topic, that malarial tear. Next topic, we move to the esophageal perforations. So we already had discussed this esophagus. The lumen of esophagus has a very good tendency to stretch up to 5 times. So that stretchability, due to having the high stretchability, it has less the strength. That's why it is very much prone to be rupture or perforated. So esophageal walls doesn't contain the serosa. Sometimes esophagus rupture spontaneously when forceful vomiting is against the closed glottis. That is called Borheve syndrome. So Borheve syndrome is nothing, just if patient have sudden forceful vomiting against closed glottis, means patient at that time patient was taking breath. So if that time a sudden vomiting occurs, so there is so much pressure increase inside the stomach, sorry, the esophagus, and that esophagus may rupture at any point of the esophagus. So this is the not similar to that malleolus tear, because in malleolus tear there is no perforation, there is only tearing is there inside, and the vomiting is severe but not against the closed glottis. Here the condition is patient have the vomiting against closed glottis and there is a rupture. So the other etiological factor of that rupture of the esophagus, there is a four main factors. First, instrumentation means some instrument while for the therapeutic purpose or for the diagnostic purpose, any instrumentation doing endoscopy or that or other procedure, the esophagoscopy, dilations or intubations. In that, while during these procedures esophagus may get injured or may get ruptured by doing any unskillful surgeon, or sometimes the skillful surgeon also may do, it may happens. And the spontaneous perforation or rupture we already discussed, that is Bore-Heavy syndromes. Then other traumatic causes, there's like any foreign bodies, any penetrating wound, blunt injury of the chest or abdomen, surgical dissections, uh, and ingestion of the corrosive agents that may lead the perforations, and some other pathological disorders which causes the weakening of the esophagus, just like the peptic perforations, carcinoma of the wall of esophagus, or the anastomosis which is weak. So that are the four main factor for that perforation in the esophagus: instrumentation, spontaneous, traumatic, and other pathological factors. The clinical symptoms of the perforation includes that severe pain, early collapse of the patients, because due to the perforation patient have the bleeding, because there is esophageal vessels are there, and if they any vessels get ruptured, then very fastly patient losing so much blood, and patient will collapse very early with the hypovolemic shocks, and along with this nausea and dyspnea. These are the symptoms uh, patient may complain, and the signs included the fever due to that. If the mediastinal infection is there, then fever may occur, shock, tenderness, crepitations, Hamman signs, and pleural effusion, pneumothorax, hemothorax. So these are things you can found in any patient of the perforations. The Hammond signs is nothing, just like in the case of the esophageal perforations, the bleeding is there and the blood is comes into the mediastinum, and due to that perforation, some air also comes to the uh, mediastinum. So what happens with this every beats of the heart, you can hear the sound of scrumbing or some crepitation, some sounds along with the beats of the heart. It means there is a air in the mediastinum nearby that pericardium. So that is the Hamman signs. This usually occurs in this conditions. So the investigations require the chest x-ray. What you got in the chest X-ray? Which side of the, so means that the side where esophagus is ruptured, that side of the thorax get the air, because if the esophagus is ruptured, then the air is entered into the mediastinum, so that it shifts that trachea to the opposite side, and that is the pneumothorax occurs. You can find the pneumothorax in that side, affected side, and if you in the contrast radiography, you can find that opacity in that particular side when that radio opaque material leaks in that mediastinum in that side. And the endoscopy is very much important and very much suggestive in the case of if you're suspecting any case esophageal rupture, because it is the therapeutic as well as the diagnostic as well as therapeutic also, because when the same time, if the endoscopy is doing, at the same time surgeons can repair that perforations. So that endoscopy is very useful tool in the case of this esophageal ruptures. So, and now comes to the management part. The first thing what we should manage, that is the take care of the patient with the shock, because there is a bleeding, and due to the bleeding patient may go into the hypovolemic shock. So that hypovolemia should be tackle first, then later on due to the mediastinum is involved, so patient may have the respiratory distress. So that things also should be covered, and patient may have cardiac problems also. So means all are just try to resuscitate the patient in emergency with that oxygens, IV fluids, broad spectrum antibiotics, and nil orally. You should not give any patient if you're suspecting any perforation, then you should not give anything through the mouth. And along with this, you just have to plan the surgical repair of that perforations. So there is two kind of surgical reparation, repair according to the site of that the perforation. If esophagus is ruptured in the cervical part, then you have to go through that that just above the clavicle, and if it is thorax part, then through the right subcostal regions. So what should be done in the cervical perforation surgery include that operative drainage and closure of the perforations. If closure is not possible, then cervical esophagostomy tube should be inserted through the perforations and lead out through the stab wound in the neck to provide drainage and control of the fistula. Understand? It means you insert one tube inside that esophagus, and keep it out, so that you start feeding to that patients, and directly through the perforation area you insert one tube into the esophagus, you start feeding, and later you just repair that patients. In the thoracic approach, just like we discussed in tracheoesophageal fistula condition, for the right subcostal regions, are the right intercostal regions, and enter to the that area where that exact the perforation is there, and just close the perforated area, and you may put the some drainage. So these are the very advanced surgical procedures, usually not done by Ayurvedic surgeons. So you just important thing is that this slide is very important. Means if you are suspecting any case of the esophageal perforations, you have to just resuscitate the patient, give the intensive care initially. Once the patient is stable, the bleeding is stopped, then you can send out the patient for the definitive repair in the higher centers. Next thing is that the foreign body in the esophagus. So that foreign body injuries is common in the usually in the childs and in the elderly peoples. So and mostly common in that means more dangerous in the airway obstructions, but the esophageal obstruction is also dangerous, because what happen in the children, there is a small esophagus, a small trachea. So if any object is obstructing the esophagus, so it pushes the trachea, so patient may have respiratory distress also. So these foreign bodies usually stuck in that four anatomical construction we already had discussed in anatomical part, that esophagus has four constructed area where the lumen is little shorter, so means less diameter. So in that four part, that the foreign body may stuck. That is the importance of that anatomical slide. So common foreign bodies in that esophagus, there is the metallic, non-metallic, denture partial or complete, and that any other small things. The metallic part include the coin, pins, safety pins, buttons, batteries, piece of metal objects, blades, broken spoons. Non-metallic part include the glass beads, marbles, plastic toys, usually in the childhood or the psychiatric patients. So these are two conditions where this ingestion of this foreign body, ingestion of these foreign materials is common. And sometime in old age, accidentally with the coughing or something, the artificial denture, the tooth of the patient may engulf and swallow, and that may stuck inside the esophagus, fish bone, or some other uh, non-veg material may stuck in that part. So usually, we already had discussed the pediatric patient, psychiatric patients, are patient with underlying esophageal disorder, just like the malignancy of esophagus, the eclasia. Because if there is underlying pathology in the esophagus, just like malignancy, it causes the constriction of that lumen, because there is a mass, so that lumen is become very narrow, so that may lead to the obstruction also. So these are the patients. So the clinical presentations usually depends on the patient. If the patient is healthy adult, then he or she can explain everything, that what he or she have ingested, and how it get ingested, and how what is the time. So what is the problem exactly. But the most commonly it occurs in the children's and in the psychiatric patients, that may not be able to explain all the things. So the patients may have especially in the pediatric patients, they may have that irritability, not feeding properly, drooling, chest pain, and coughing. So that these symptoms may be occur. Respiratory symptoms may occur due to the esophageal obstruction, because esophagus may compress the trachea due to the obstruction, so that may cause the obstruction of the trachea, that may cause the respiratory distress, and that presents as the dyspnea, stridor, and the coughing and labor bleeding, breathing. These are these things may be present in that patients. Understand? So this is the clear. This is the sign symptoms may be present in the patients. Physical examinations may have not very much important roles, because you don't have any proper history. So and you know that if the patient is not telling, you are not able to examine properly also, because patient is in the distress also. So the go for the diagnostic, that radiography is the best tool to diagnose this. So if the metallic, if you have history, patient give the history that he or she have ingested any metallic objects, then radiography, the plain x-ray may explain the everything, and you can find the site of that foreign body, where the foreign body get is stuck in their part. So, and always take both views, AP views and the lateral views, so you can ideally find out where the foreign body is there. You can see these pictures. So with this X-ray AP view, you cannot say that where is the foreign body. It may, so if somebody has any locket is there, so it also, that's why before the radiography, all the metallic objects should be removed. And the you can see this is the metallic objects. That's why it is the clear opacity, and you can see there is the coin. Patient may hear some other objects patient may have ingested. So now come to the treatment part. Treatment is just means the removal of that foreign body. So that how you should remove depends on that location where the foreign body is stuck, and what is the time of that ingestion and the presentation, so you can see where it may be the present. And according to the age of the patients, the child, old person, ingestion of the caustic foreign bodies like buttons, batteries should be considered as an emergency. Delayed in these patients may lead to esophageal perforation because that is the corrosive material. That's why it's totally depends on the what material patient may have ingested. If you have no idea, then you have to try as early as possible to remove that objects. Some sharp metallic objects like pins, needles, razors, nails, they should be removed under controlled operative room conditions. And danger of perforation is very much significantly present if any sharp object is ingested. So the removal is endoscopic removal. First try with the endoscopic removal that confirm the diagnosis as well as remove the also, because endoscope has all that type of that forceps, so that it can do the diagnostic as well as therapeutic also. Usually that general anesthesia is required for that conditions, means doing this removal of the foreign body, always anesthesia is required. uh, so I this is the other detail, the rigid type of esophagus, I'm not going to this detail. One kind of that balloon endoscope for the removal, that is also is important, means when you find out any object which is in radio opaque and single and is stuck in the esophagus, then balloon endoscope means you are just inserting on catheter which have the balloon at the end. So first to insert the catheter and then inflate the balloon, then you pull out that balloon. So along with this balloon, that foreign body comes out. So this has very little chance of the esophageal injury because you are not inserting any instruments, but there is a chances very limited. Better to do that endoscopic removal, depends on the what object is stuck there. So that's how the topic. Some other, if endoscopic uh, procedure is not successful, then you just go to the direct uh, opening opening of that esophagus, and then remove of that these kind of that, especially the sharp foreign bodies like the blades, knives, nettles, nails, or if the esophagus has some other associated conditions like the stricture formation is there due to that esophagitis, or that carcinoma is there, so that's surgery may be required. So surgery is just cervical esophagostomy. Esophagostomy just open the esophagus and remove the cell, because you have to confirm the place of that obstruction by that radiography. Then you just go with that approach. If it is in the cervical part, then go from that cervical portion, left side of neck. And if it is in the thorax part, then go to the thoracic approach. The approach depends on the site of the obstructions. So here is that this topic ends, and the next remaining we discuss in the next class.